Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber,
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning.
and Mark is back with us today. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you. It's good to be back, and I'm excited for a great show today.
We actually had a couple of audience members that were asking about you. Where is he? When's he coming back? So,
Yeah, that's
they're-
incredibly flattering. It's looking forward to a good time today and good comments and dialogue back and forth with people.
so the background picture behind us is again AI generated, and what I asked for this time was a futuristic news studio, and this is what it rendered. We're always amazed at what the creativity that AI is able to apply to pictures like this.
Oh, amazing! And you see that shadow or that light ring on our table? That's actually a reflection of the AI light ring.
Hey, you weren't supposed to give it away. You guys are in that studio.
Yeah, I know. Well, but it looks like we're in the studio.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
put my
really
arm out, the light ring goes away.
amazing. Yeah. All right, so we've got a few news items, and maybe we can start with an update on the 3 Tesla Roadsters. Just called the sellers this morning, actually,
Yeah.
and I got the latest update. It turns out that it's going to be easier for them to own the sea containers that the cars are in.
Mhm.
So they ended up buying them, and the fundamental reasons are is clearances, ownership issues, twice the amount of paperwork. So they bought them, and the cars and the sea containers now are in the same ownership. What will happen next is the next boat leaving for the United States, and they are definitely coming back to the United States, as we had pointed out earlier. They will leave July 5th. Be on a boat, and then it's probably a couple of weeks on the ocean, would you say?
I'm thinking it may be as much as 4 weeks on the ocean. We get a
Mhm.
lot of shipments from China, both for Gruber Power Services for batteries and for cabling products for Gruber Communication products. And usually the trip from the time it's dock to dock
Mhm.
is usually somewhere around 30 days plus or minus about 5 days.
Mhm. Okay. So we talked about, I told him that social media at this point has gone a bit dormant on this issue. But boy, the instant those cars hit the shores here and then our facility here, I'm sure that the social media effort is going to crank back up.
Oh, yes, that's going to be an amazing thing to be able to have the privilege of being there when we crack open the first of those sea containers.
And we've been talking about doing a live stream, like you suggested,
Yeah.
to broadcast this event, and it'll be like the second opening or a second barn find here.
It will be amazing to see, that's for sure.
hmm Question was, are we able to store 3 sea containers? And I told the sellers we've got 7 commercial buildings here, and we've got plenty of land to store 3 sea containers. So once the cars are unloaded from the sea containers, they will go to the Gruber Motor Company service center, and the sea containers then will be sold. So if anybody's looking for some sea containers in the Phoenix area, there will be 3 of them available, and most likely that will be the first part of August timeframe. Once they're brought into the Gruber Motor Company service center, we're going to do a full diagnostic workup. We're going to fire up the VMS and the 12-volt systems. We're going to do log files on all 3 and extract information about the history of these cars, which will also be revealing, because now we'll be able to tell exactly when they got bricked and under what conditions, basically.
Oh, by all means, that's the one thing that keeps running through my mind, being able to get in there, get to those log files, and see exactly what picture it is of what happened. I'm really excited about that coming up.
And, despite having numerous conversations with Tesla people that were there back in the day as to what the mileage on these could be, because they're assumed to be 0 or close to,
Right.
they weren't sure whether there was any test driving mileage on the early Roadster. So if any of you want to chime in, we're open to any feedback. Of course, it'll all be solved once we get the cars here. We're able to fire them up and get actual odometer readings on these cars. So look for this thing to take on a whole new level of excitement and importance by early August or middle of August or so. Looks like we've got a bunch of YouTube comments or questions.
Yeah, Niles from the Biodanish Genome Institute is chiming in, and good morning, Niles. He says hello again. Haven't cloned you yet. I've been too busy.
Okay. Thank you for joining us again. Instagram, Joe Surma says, Rivian has joined the NACS coalition. Yeah, that was the big news this morning.
Yeah, it was. We saw that come just a couple hours ago. And, do we want to take off on that just a little bit since it's
Absolutely.
early on?
It's time, yeah.
It's to me that this is just a matter of the dominoes falling. We were talking about this before I left when General Motors and Ford both announced that they were going to be part of the coalition. I did a little bit of lookup since I've been out for a week and found out that okay, we have Ford, GM, and now Rivian on the automaker side. On the charging network side, we've got Blink, ChargePoint, ABB, EVgo, Flow, and Tritium, and Wallbox. Either going to make charging units with NACS connectors, or are going to equip their networks. Now, one of the networks that isn't listed is significant is Electrify America. However, Electrify America gets all of its charge units from either ABB or Tritium, so I think it's kind of a default.
It's coming. So the question eventually will be, there will be a minority, and those will be the holdouts.
Yep.
The next big one that I'm curious about is Lucid. How long do you think it will take them to actually adopt the standard? Any opinions there, guys?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have my camera enabled, but Pete Rawlinson this morning was on Twitter after the Rivian news broke, and he was saying in a short video clip that Lucid is not going to adopt the NACS until they offer 1,000-watt charging or something like that, 1,000-volt charging maybe.
1,000-volt, yes.
Yeah, because he said that the CCS and the NACS, there's no difference. They're just a type of plug. What's really important is what he's saying is the voltage that they charge. So he's waiting to see, excuse me, to see updates on that. So he's not ready to adopt yet, as far as I understand it.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, that take makes some sense. Although I think Lucid may end up being kind of left in the dust when everything settles on it. The Tesla Level 4 chargers that they've announced for the Cybertruck and for the Semi already charge at those levels. They'll charge it up to I believe it's 500 kilowatts, and it's somewhere around between 800 and 1,000 volts. Just that the Level 4 chargers really aren't out in the public much.
Gotcha. Okay. Be an interesting thing to watch evolve. By the way, the instant I heard that announcement, I thought, okay, let me go look at my Tesla stock.
Yeah.
And despite the market being down 347 points this morning, Tesla was up $1.66. Now, granted, based on almost $300, that's not a great, spike. But within 2 minutes, it was up to $2.61. And someone just said it's up to from $2.54 this morning or something up to $2.70 or something.
Yeah, I had looked just before we went live here. I looked, and Tesla was running at $269.50, and it was just a hair below 270. Rivian is up over 5% today as well in the news, which to me makes total sense. Just like what GM announced last week, Rivian now can save tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars in building out a charging network, while at the same time giving their customers far better access to charging than they've had in the past.
Right.
So I think the Rivian customers are probably the big winners here.
So Instagram, Dustin Goffron says, when you're charging at home, 240 volts, does it help the battery to charge at a slower current? Yeah. The lithium-ion cells especially, slower charges are always better. If you're doing home charging and you know how many miles you're consuming every day, then schedule your charge amperage to a point where by morning you'll have a full tank of gas or a full charge without, because speed is not of the essence during the middle of the night. And then, of course, pick a time where you have your lowest kilowatt per hour rates, which most utilities will tell you when to avoid peak hour rates.
Did you guys already do this Africa one?
No, we have not yet. I agree with you, Pete. And for those people who have solar on their house, that they need to remember, do their charging during the middle of the day. Because that's likely the time period when the solar energy that's being generated by your solar panels exceeds your solar usage, especially early in the day. your AC systems and other stuff haven't kicked in yet. And so if you have that available to you, you can charge then as well. I agree with you too, though. Turning the amperage down a little bit lower current, it doesn't heat the battery as much, and overall ends up being a little bit better for the battery because it's heat that kills the batteries more than anything else.
Yeah. And of course, if you're charging during the day and you have a solar system, instead of backfeeding the meter, you're actually capturing more value because the utility is not going to pay you as much as what you're putting into your car for charging.
Exactly. I have solar at my house. We get wholesale rates, so we get about 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour from the power company when we backfeed it to them. And really, what we're doing is we backfeed to the power company. They give us 2.8 cents. Our next door neighbor gets our solar.
Right, for 14 cents.
For 14
right?
cents.
And of course, if you try to feed your neighbor directly, that happens to still be illegal in the United States. Did you know that? Yeah.
Yes.
You can't sell power. It's a monopoly that the utilities have.
Yes.
Looks like we have a Instagram question. Matimo Ignatius, and he is from Africa. Welcome. We always like to see where people are coming in from. He says electric vehicles are starting to be popular in Africa, especially in Kenya. My question is advice on how to start an EV service center and how to be successful like yours. I just had another question like this from Dubai this morning, by the way, that started yesterday. And I said, we can't franchise. I don't have any people to send there to train you. We're so busy trying to keep up with the business we have. We have no one we could free up for training or for, advice like this. And anyway, the one this morning, and I'm digressing, but I'm going to answer your questions here in just a second. They offered to fly me to Dubai.
Wow.
And all expenses paid, right? And to train them on how to work on EVs. And of course, it wouldn't just be me. There would be many other people here that would be, with various disciplines.
Oh, yeah.
The bottom line here is it's extremely difficult because of the shortage of companies like us to find any kind of bandwidth to be able to spend time training or even franchising or scaling. I would love to open up in New York, LA, any of the major metro areas in the United States. We'd have more business than we can handle. But the bottom line is I have no one to send there. Our people are so busy.
Right.
And as I've said many times, it's not like you have this huge population of skills out there that are working for other companies that you could attract through ads, or through, looking for resumes. These skills just don't exist at the level that we need in the independent space.
Yeah. We've told people in the past some of the things that they can do. Make sure that they have some electronics experience. Get that, be able to go to this board level, figure out what each of these chips mean, how to solder and desolder them, and how to test them and figure out what they are. That electrical engineering is going to be important. Meld that in with the software capabilities. These are very smart electric vehicles that they're talking about, and then you're going to have some people who have mechanical skill as well. For the right person, maybe like your Dubai people, maybe they bring somebody here for an internship and actually begin to learn how to work on cars here, and then can take and themselves transfer the knowledge back to their location. We don't know. But you're right. It's a very unique skill, and even Tesla struggles with that.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
And so
one bit of advice I might have for you, and I don't have the name up there anymore, but the gentleman from Africa, Kenya, Africa. If you're looking to start an electric vehicle business in your country, some of the ways that other people have done that was if they were able to find a resource that's already trained and working for one of the OEMs. And, we have partnerships with some of these companies, and it's really poor form to poach people from your partners, so we don't do it. But if you place an ad in the paper, for example, or wherever we place ads nowadays, I guess with the information age, you don't do paper and yellow pages anymore, right?
Yeah,
I'm
no,
updating
not
myself
at
here.
all.
Wherever you place your ad, you might just attract the talent that you're looking for. The other option you have is to start with doing low-tech auto. Do your brakes and tires and paint and body and mechanical stuff. And then when you get into something that is beyond that, you have to turn the business away. But eventually you're going to acquire some skills that will attract that business. And, potentially you'll find somebody in your territory that has those skills.
One of the ways that we learned early on was to literally go to the insurance auction, buy a couple of crashed cars, and go through the process of trying to rebuild those cars, including what was on the on the EV side. That was a huge learning experience for us, and might be, if you have the time, another way to get the hardware that you need to be able to work on.
And having managed that early stage of the business, I can add two other terms to that. It was painful and cumbersome. It was and costly, extremely costly.
Yeah, it's there. I can't think of any easy way to do this.
No, so you're going to be drawing red ink for some time before something profitable begins to happen. Looks like Instagram, Ian Caldwell, welcome back. He is talking about the 3 Tesla Roadsters that are in China right now that will be here soon. He says, since the service disconnect was pulled, would the main batteries be recoverable on those Roadsters? Well, we still are not 100% certain whether those service disconnects were pulled. We're thinking that it would have made perfect sense for Tesla, knowing that these were going to be on the water for 3 weeks or a month, to have pulled those service plugs, but we haven't been able to get any confirmation for that. The second part of that is, let's say that they were pulled. We don't know whether a 13-year pack without any kind of drain on it would survive that long a period without charge.
Right. And personally, my theory is that these packs are going to be dead as a doornail.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as a battery that has no resistance internally.
Mm-hmm.
And even the very smallest amount of resistance is going to cause a very slow decline in the battery, even if the service plug is pulled.
Sure.
Once the battery gets to that area below 2 volts, we know that there's a chemical process that takes place inside the lithium ion cells. Basically, the lithium and the electrolyte, they end up merging and shorting out with the cathodes and the anodes, and eventually it kills the cells. So I'm not terribly hopeful regardless, but you never know.
Yeah. We're in the battery business. We have critical power batteries. There's still AGM batteries, VRL A-type batteries, lead acid, sealed, no maintenance. And it's a common practice, if you're in the battery business, to top charge them.
Mm-hmm.
Even Tesla, some of the old timers I talked to, when they had lithium ion batches of cells in inventory, there was a regular top charging program to keep them at a certain voltage level. So that's something we're not going to know until they get here, and we would be very surprised if there was any life in those batteries. Now, the next part of that is, if there was life in those batteries, what will the next owners do with that? Are they going to drive these cars?
Right.
Well, if they do that, it's going to rapidly lose equity or the equity that they have in those vehicles, because what makes them so unique and so much demand is the fact that they are very low mileage cars.
I think one of the more intriguing things that I hope that we're able to do is put the car up on a lift, drop the battery, put it on an 11-point charger, and see if it'll even take a charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if it starts to take a charge and can hold a charge, because even if it's dead, maybe they're not so far gone that they can't hold a charge and come back to life.
Well, I can address that. The lithium-ion battery cells, the 18650s, once they get below 2 volts and they spend any length of time there, you can't bring them back to life.
Okay.
And we learned that the hard way with our first building, if you remember that fire that we had.
Yes.
It's exactly what we were trying to do. There was, very little information available, and we thought that we could coax that battery back to life, and that did not end up being the case.
Yeah, unfortunately. Very unfortunately.
It looks like there's one for you, Mark.
Yeah, Ingemar Anderson. Good morning and welcome. He says, welcome back, Mark. Thank you very much. Glad to have you on as well, Ingemar.
Facebook, Ben Mendoza says, greetings, welcome. Then we've got Martin Östlund from Sweden joining us again. Welcome.
Good morning.
And then Martin, that's right. Martin is already asking a question as well. He says, yes, some 800-volt car charge really slow on 400 volts. Didn't know you could charge them at 400 though.
I think it's just a matter of the PAM or power electronics module in whatever cars. They'll bring in whatever voltage and amperage, convert it to DC in a manner that the battery storage system can store. I know on some of the older Model S software, you could see both the voltage and the amperage coming into the vehicle, into its PAM.
Mhm.
And it was interesting to see because that voltage, it'd start up at 300 or 360, and the amps are 275 or 300. And pretty soon they're going up and down.
Mhm.
And what surprised me is that the voltage coming in was going up and down as much as the amperage was.
Interesting. Okay. It looks like Niles has a suggestion for us. He's with YouTube, of course, and he says, what if Kenya gathers people with the right backgrounds and sends them to you, perhaps as internships that benefit you, and after a year they go back to Kenya? That's an intriguing notion, Niles, and we have done that very thing. It's the short-term internships that kill us, and we've done those as well.
Yeah.
Now we become a learning institution, a nonprofit, and that's not what Gruber Motor Company can survive with. Give you an example. The first 3 months or so of having an intern is an enormous amount of shadowing and question and answer activity. And what ends up happening is you have a huge productivity drain. And when you recapture that after they gain some competence, a year would be probably at a point where we'd see return on investment.
Yeah, I think a year is about the minimum point, and you make a good point. Your point there is actually very salient. It's not just the intern who's not productive.
Precisely.
It's whoever that intern is shadowing who their productivity falls off a cliff as well because they're having to spend a whole bunch of time basically teaching somebody who doesn't know.
And then you're constantly readjusting labor times because you can't charge the customer for that learning time.
Right.
So there's a lot of accounting work that has to take place as well. But yeah, for the right individual and for our independent service center, the right skill set is somebody with an electronics background. I would love to be able to hire a master mechanic and turn them loose and have them learn electronics, but it doesn't work that way. It's much easier teaching somebody with an electronics background the mechanical low-tech auto aspects than to take a low-tech auto expert and try to move them into advanced electronics type work.
That totally makes sense. On TikTok, Johnny Koso8 says hello and good morning and hello, Johnny. Also on Instagram, Madamu Ignatius asks a good question. Can one repurpose old or / used EV batteries from OEMs to convert motorcycles, we call them boda, to electric motorcycles?
You know, there are a lot of people that are buying collision damaged EVs and then repurposing the batteries. You take, for example, your average 10-year-old Model S. Putting that battery into another Model S is probably not a great idea because we still don't know how long these multi-cell 18650 packs are going to last.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's anything like the Roadster, we'll probably see another 5 years, maybe a little more. So what these people are doing with these batteries, and have been for many years actually, is repurposing the modules inside for a variety of DC storage applications. The solar business is a big one. You can essentially take these modules, put them into a cabinet on shelves, and as they go bad, you just simply slide them out and put another one in. It's not like that Model S where you have to drop 1,200 pounds out of the car, open it up, break the seals, and do lots of plumbing to put it back together and resealing. The second variation that we've seen is people converting golf carts from the traditional 6-volt lead-acid wet cell type batteries.
Okay.
Of course, it probably makes them go real fast, which might be dangerous on the golf course. But that's another popular application. Where they oftentimes get into difficulty is not providing any thermal management for these
Sure.
modules, because they are designed to work within a certain temperature range. And the problem with a 18650 lithium ion cell type module is if you allow it to overcharge or overheat, you get combustion.
Right. Right. You know, although to the point of our contributor, I remember several months ago we spoke about on the podcast an Indian high school science teacher who took used laptop batteries and converted them, putting them into series to get proper voltage, into electric battery module that he would then put under the seat in a small motorcycle and run an electric motor, basically an electric motorcycle out of old used laptop batteries.
Interesting. Yeah. It'd be
So-
interesting to see what kind of distance he got with that small footprint of DC storage.
Yeah, and I don't have the details in front of me, so I'm not totally sure. But the in theory, the concept is definitely true that you could take a module from a car and put it into a motorcycle. I agree with you. Thermal management, I think, is going to be an issue for it. If they can solve that, it would greatly enhance the ability of the motorcycle to move forward. On the plus side, you're not going to have the torque and horsepower requirements. So you're not going to have the draw on the batteries that causes them to heat up like you would in a car.
TikTok, Van Goat Wagon, welcome back. He says, "What's up, my friends? Good seeing y'all."
Good seeing you, Van Goat.
So one of the news items that I have is
Real
yeah.
quick, sorry, that was Watts up. Watts up, my friends.
Oh, I thought you misspelled it. Okay, sorry about that. It was intentional. What's up, my friends? So one of the things that I found in an article interesting is that Elon Musk thinks they will solve autonomy soon, meaning full self-driving cars, not just partial where you have to put your hand back on the wheel. You can literally go to sleep in the car now, and the car will take you somewhere, or a robo-taxi, for example.
Right.
He also feels that they will be the first one to roll out this capability. And from an investment standpoint in Tesla, he feels that this will be a major valuation game changer, being the first and having that kind of capability. And then the business that a robo-taxi type, production of those types of vehicles would include.
Oh my goodness, yes. You know, Elon is the one of the reasons I like Tesla as a company and stock is because Elon is willing to go out on that limb and say, we're going to do this, even when the doubters say it can't be done, or it's too expensive, or it'll never happen. Elon has proven over and over and over and over again that they can do this.
He subscribes to the notion that for the right individual, the term impossible is actually a challenge.
Yes.
Rather than something that makes you avoid it at all costs.
Yes, by all means. And on autonomy, I wanted to take because I've heard the term but haven't really researched it. They talk about full self-driving and level 3 and level 1 autonomy and level 5 and what is it? So the SAE International is a standard setting body that talks about levels of driving autonomy. There are 6 levels. Level 0 is what you're used to in most ICE vehicles today. Potential of automatic braking, blind spot warning, lane departure warning. That's
okay.
They'll provide warnings to you. They might provide a little nudge on the steering wheel, but you got to drive the car. Level 1 is that they'll provide steering, or they'll brake and accelerate as needed. For example, lane centering or adaptive cruise control. Can't do both, but if it can do one. Level 2 autonomy is to provide steering and braking or acceleration. Think Tesla Autopilot. Think full self-driving. Your car is pretty intelligent and can do some of these things, but you have to sit behind the wheel and be attentive to driving. Level 3 is the fourth level that they describe. The features can drive the vehicle by itself under limited conditions. Now, the vehicle won't operate unless all these conditions are met. But when the feature and when the feature or when the car asks for a driver to drive, the driver has to drive. This would be a good example. Would be you get in a car, it can drive on the freeway, it can pull over to the left lane, pass somebody else, go back to the right lane, those kinds of things. But it isn't good for city driving. It can't do exits and entrances to the freeway. But other than that, you can kind of do hands off. You know, you think the GM commercials where the people are slapping and clapping and stuff like that. Level 4 autonomy is Waymo or Uber. Your car will drive itself in a small defined area. Now, here in Phoenix, we have Waymo vehicles in the southeast and central parts of the city. And so you'll go around and you'll see two people sitting in the back of a car and nobody in the front. It's still kind of unnerving to see that. But the pedals and or steering wheel might not even be installed in cars like that. Waymo is starting to take out the steering wheel on those cars. Level 5 is what's called full self-driving or full autonomy. And that's where Tesla wants to go. That is basically is that your car is autonomous. It can drive anywhere and it can do so under any condition.
Amazing. Okay.
And that's where Tesla wants to go. It's going to take a while to get there, but I think they'll do it.
He was in this article. He was saying by the end of this year they may have something.
I'm not going to
Speculate.
I'm not going to speculate yes or no on that particular one.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, guys, Elon was saying he thought that this 11.4.4 release should have been 12.0, the fully autonomous, but he thinks they're further ahead than the rest of the team, and they're kind of still debating all that, but they are having massive updates come out, so you never know. It could be by the end of the year.
And then we don't know what kind of regulatory delays this will bring into play. Fascinating stuff. So looks like Niles has a comment. He says, unfortunately, the wind resistance of motorcycles is so that the battery pack would be too heavy if it were to have any practical useful range. We need higher densities, and we're headed there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Niles has probably a pretty good point there. I'll have to look up and see if I can research that science teacher that puts batteries in motorcycles under the seat. I think what happens is that he gets motorcycles that can go 15 or 20 miles at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, if you think about it, the amount of real estate that you're taking with you when you compare a car to a motorcycle is substantially different.
Yeah.
In that car, you can literally have a 1,200-pound battery pack just underneath your floor, and then the entire cabin around you. In a motorcycle, oftentimes a motorcycle is roughly the same size as the guy that's riding it, and so there's less surface area and less place to pack that kind of DC storage. But like he points out, we need higher densities, and they're continuously improving that as well. So we've got another news update for you, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, especially in the Roadster podcast. We have been working on a special Tesla Roadster for the last 3 months or so. It is a Tesla Roadster VIN 507 that attempted to go around the world in 80 days. And if you remember in the last century, there was a movie by that title.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. It ended up taking him 120 days instead of 80 days. And there were a number of hurdles, different voltages in countries, roads, and with political instabilities and red tape and customs. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Sure.
But Rafael de Maistre, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the owner of this record-setting VIN 507 Tesla Roadster, and he won a number of world records, which the first one was winning the first EV race around the world in a standard all-electric car. The second one was being the first man to drive alone around the world in an electric car. Third one, making the fastest electric vehicle circumnavigation around the world ever in 127 days.
Okay.
And then the final one was making the longest drive in a standard electric car, 28,282 kilometers. Well, this Tesla became pretty famous, and a museum in Munich, Germany, wanted to put it up for display. So Raphael decided that seems like a great idea, so he gave it to him for a year. And the museum was surprised because literally hundreds of thousands of visitors came to see this special car.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that kind of interest, they said, you know what, would it be okay if we kept it another 6 months? And Raphael decided, okay, 6 months more, but then I want my car back, right?
Sure.
So unfortunately, the second team for that next 6 months did not charge the car properly. And what happened to this Roadster was what happens to a lot of Roadsters. It got what's called hard bricked. None of the other Teslas suffer from this, but if you don't charge a Tesla Roadster for 2 months or more, it can reach a state where it's called being bricked. If a company like us can get to it within the first 3 to 6 months, we can bring it back to life. We do what's called a recovery. Even Tesla now is doing recoveries again.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to one of the corporate guys yesterday. They're going to attempt a recovery up in Toronto, Canada on a Tesla Roadster.
Very nice.
So, but after that, it's hard bricked. And it's what we were talking about earlier. If the voltage level on a lithium ion 18650 is below 2 volts for 6 months or more, it's toast. It's not going to come back. It becomes, there's a chemical destructive process that takes place within the cell. So anyway, the customer needed to get the pack replaced, and there was some deferred maintenance in the car. So he decided to send us the car all the way to the United States. And since he's into emission-free transportation, he decided to find a sailboat, a clipper ship, basically, unmotorized, and one that had an empty cargo hold coming to the United States. It was going to pick up coffee here in the U.S. somewhere, or even Cuba, I think. And so they had some space for his Roadster. Now, for those of you interested in seeing this whole story, we're going to do a press release. It's also on our gallery section now on our website if you want more information on VIN 507 and some of the pictures of its adventures past and now going forward. So he put it in this cargo hold of this sailboat. It arrived around Cuba, and the winds were not favorable. Now remember, there's no diesel engine to kick up here and drive it to take it to Miami. So they hovered around Havana, Cuba for about 2 weeks because the winds were unfavorable, which delayed it a bit. And eventually the winds cooperated and they were able to sail this into Miami in the harbor and unload it. From there, it was scheduled to come to our shop. And we could not get a Tesla Semi at the time. This was about 6 or 8 months ago. That was available yet for this emission-free transport.
Right.
So unfortunately, one of the rules got broken, and it had to come overland transport with a diesel truck to be delivered to our shop. Well, the car has now been completely rebuilt, and in a Tesla Roadster, you have deferred maintenance. One of the main ones is in the electronics, in that power electronics module. So we rebuilt that. We changed all of the wear components. We found suspension issues with the car. We weatherproofed a number of items on the car because this is a car that's not going to be sitting in someone's garage.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tesla Roadster is not 100% waterproof. There are two vulnerable places. One of them is the HVAC controller underneath the front hood vanes, which if it gets water inside, begins to blow a circuit board, which has both 12 volts and 400 volts, and neither of those coexist well together. And the charge port light ring, which is also not waterproof. And once it gets water, it begins to corrode a connector, and then your charge port light ring goes either different colors or goes dead completely. So anyway, we did a number of improvements to the car, and the owner is flying in Saturday, the end of this week. And by Monday, he is going to take his Tesla Roadster and continue his journey around the world. And this time he's going to go across the United States and then eventually to China. In fact, I've got the route here. Let's see what they say. So once he goes across the United States, he's going to go to China, Kazakhstan, and Europe before finally concluding to Morocco, retracing the same route that he drove back in 2012, and again, spreading the powerful message of emission-free transportation. So for those of you interested, again, our website under Gallery has a lot of information. We'll be doing press releases. I'm sure the magazines and media will pick this up, and it'll be fun again to watch this car's journey around the world. It has OVMS, by the way, so while it was on the Clipper ship, we were able to track it and show where it was on the ocean at any given point in time.
That's very cool. And now I know we had talked about Raphael being a guest on one of our podcasts coming up as well.
Mm-hmm. He will be joining us. I'm glad you reminded me. Thursday, he's going to be joining us on a Zoom call. And for those of you that have questions about his first journey and his planned journey, this would be the time to bring your questions and meet Raphael Demastri to find out who's behind this world-famous Roadster.
Looking forward to that very much.
So YouTube, it looks like Niles is giving us a comment here. He says, I think Tesla full self-driving needs a larger set of fixed rules as dictated by local traffic laws and surroundings. He says that neural nets can then do the maneuvering within that. We need more rules and less neural net. For example, a 40 mile per hour speed sign must be at 40 before the sign, or does it mean slow down to 40 now? This should not be for
the neural net
to decide, because how to follow the rules differs by locale. Sorry, but I will shut up now. Niles, your comments are always welcome. You're one of our most technical visitors, and we always appreciate your inputs.
Yeah, and Niles is making a good point about the extreme complexity of of what cars have to go through. That speed limit example is a great one, because here in the United States, sure, when you see a 65 mile an hour speed limit on a freeway after having driven 75 miles an hour, technically you're supposed to slow down to 65 by the time you get to the sign, but not really a big deal. If you're going in to a school zone and you see a 15 mile an hour speed sign, you had better darn be at 15 miles an hour or less by the time you get to that sign. Otherwise, you will get stopped and get a ticket. Well,
Yeah.
that's different rules just on a very, very simple scale, and multiply that by a couple million, and you get a sense of how complicated it is for these neural nets. But complicated is not impossible. I do think it's going to happen at some point, and I think I'm going to be alive to see it.
It reminds me of a funny story. A friend of mine that I worked with is at Digital Equipment as a field engineer, Carl Isbrecht. He was a tinkerer. He devoted himself to building things, in his house, and of course repairing mainframes as a main business. But he had the equivalent of a mad scientist lab in his house, and he was always building stuff. For example, he built a whistle switch back then. Do you remember the clapper?
Yes.
He had one of those way before then. If you whistled a B-flat tune, it would turn your lights on and off. He was using a digital relay. But he actually developed full self-driving back in the day. Now, this was 1976 or so. And the way he did it was he took a DC motor out of a drill. He mounted it on a plywood board with some springs. He put a rubber wheel on the end of that drill, and that plywood extended so that the rubber wheel laid on top of his steering wheel with some springs that pulled it down to keep it tight.
Okay.
Then, back then, cameras were just coming into existence using electronics. I remember tube cameras, actually. Do you know the old radios or TV stations actually had tube-based black and white cameras?
Yeah, those great big things that were on the
huge.
stands. Okay.
So he got a hold of one of the old style cameras. It was about this big, right? And he had that mounted on the front of the car, and it was feeding a circuit board. And what this camera was looking for was the white stripe in the middle of the road, and it was keying off of that.
Sure.
And that's what kept this car in the lane. course, we all thought he was going to kill himself because what happened when the stripe went away?
Yeah.
Or you got some snow on the ground, or it was dark, or it was at dusk. But anyway, I respected Carl greatly because he, again, did not let the word impossible stop him. He found ways to make anything possible. And we all laughed at his contraption, but he was way ahead of his time,
He was, and it's on the shoulders of people like Carl that this advancement continues to go forward.
Right.
And so there are those people out there to just say, yeah, okay, well, these guys did this. I'll start with that.
Yeah. All right, so we've got another bit of news item here. Trip planning and intelligent routing. The Tesla navigation system, by the way, here we go. I've got a little bit smaller font. I can read it now. Is pretty sophisticated. It will actually identify uncongested superchargers along your route. So if you're going on a trip, the amount of data that Tesla collects will help you with your trip planning. It can tell which superchargers are busy, and it can redirect your route based on that. How it does that? There must be cameras there, just the usage.
Just the usage that's going on at the supercharger station.
Which chargers are active and which ones are not.
Yeah.
So it's like having your personal air traffic controller system in your car. They go a bit further. They say that this is real-time information from the supercharger network, along with data from your car, such as initial battery pack temperature. It extrapolates that into the equation to see where your next charging option is.
Sure.
Forecasted wind speed. Amazing, right?
Yeah.
There aren't any sensors on the car, but they're looking at weather information. Yeah.
Did you want your image for this?
Oh, is there one? Yeah, I forgot. Let's do it. And then it says, with these parameters considered, Tesla can provide a highly accurate prediction of energy consumption for your journey ahead.
Do you think Tesla is able to take into account elevation gain and loss as well?
It doesn't mention that in this article, but if they're doing GPS positioning, most certainly.
I'm thinking that you can as well. It's, we take the trip from Phoenix at 1200, elevation 1200, down to Gila Bend, Arizona. It's south of Phoenix, about 75 miles. Elevation's about 500 to 600 feet. You go over through to Yuma, which is right on the Colorado River. Although there's one small mountain that you go over to get to Yuma. Yuma's at 150 feet down through the southern Mojave Desert, which is sea level. And then suddenly you're going into the mountains. And you have the coastal mountains of Southern California. You go through and you go up to 4,500 feet and up and down several peaks before you finally descend into San Diego. That up and down peaks, we have a good friend, Douglas, that drove his Model 3 to San Diego and thought for sure, not a problem. They went ahead and charged up, down there in Yuma, and they did not get as far as they thought they would because of all the mountains. And they got to San Diego okay, but they thought they were going to get there and they'd have lots of battery left, and they almost didn't make it.
Wow, it consumes the energy, yeah.
But they did not use this trip planner either. It's the trip planner. Did you know that the trip planner was put onto the Tesla app in April?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was. That was announced that it was not openly announced when Tesla put out its latest app update, but people who know and started looking through the latest app found that the Tesla trip planner that's on the cars is now in the phone app as well. So you don't have to be in the car anymore in order to plan your trip.
Fascinating.
I think it's a wonderful thing.
You bet. You bet. So it looks like YouTube, Martin Ostlund is saying there are a lot of people that are not mentally able to bend the rules at some points, but not at other. If we all, including AI, actually followed the rules, it would be easier for many drivers.
That inconsistency is one of the biggest challenges to AI and to full self-driving. You've made the point in the past. Once we get to everything being full self-driving, it's going to be incredibly safe and much simpler than it is right now. It's all of us people that are mucking it up.
Yeah, and I mean, certain industries are going to disappear. Body shops will be unnecessary.
Yes.
Who's going to have collisions when when the machines are actually doing the driving and they're not putting on makeup and drinking coffee or texting while they're, driving?
They didn't have an argument with their spouse before they got in the car and then drive
With an
super
attitude.
aggressive.
Yeah. So one of the things that we had on our title for this, on the thumbnail, was, where will the next Tesla Gigafactory be built?
Yes.
I find it fascinating, by the way, that countries now are beginning to entertain business leaders at the same level of seriousness as they are heads of political or the
Yeah.
the political people, the president of the United States,
Yeah,
for
all the
example.
heads of state and
I mean, China invited Elon to come and talk to the president, and instead of Blinken
yeah.
and the rest of the political leaders in the United States. And it makes sense because this is a global economy. And, the impact development from an outside source like Tesla in a country has an enormous impact on whatever country they select. So right now we have India. He spoke to them about a possible factory. Then the next thing we heard was he spoke to the Italians about the same thing, and then Spain most
Yes.
recently. And wasn't there another one that just popped up? I think I left it out.
Well, you've got India. We were talking about Spain. We've got France, of course.
France. There you go. He's talking to Macron about, and Macron would love to get
Yeah.
Tesla into France. So we've got a lot of dating and courting taking place right now, and I find it fascinating that our political leaders really aren't involved in any of that.
Very true.
It's going to be business leaders that are going to have a huge impact on these kinds of, and then of course building relationships as well.
Well, and these are all rumors. So is it true? Is it not? Maybe we don't know. But it could be true for France. France certainly just they're craving something as prestigious as a Tesla factory. Spain, there's rumors that Tesla's already in the planning stages for a $4 billion plus gigafactory down in the Valencia area. Italy talked to them starting in November, and he's been and Elon was in Italy just this last week, right after he left India, I think. In my opinion. If you remember, and you know how I love to go back in history, Henry Ford was the one who talked about wanting a car at every house. And this was at a time when cars were novelty items for the rich and famous. Henry Ford put out the Model T, and pretty soon everybody's driving a Ford. It could be any color they want as long as it was black.
Right.
Well, Elon has kind of said the same thing. He wants to be the next Ford. So I can see him putting multiple factories out over the next 10 years or so and getting these really, really rich, juicy incentives that largely defer or eliminate a lot of the capital expenditure that they have to put in place.
Sure. Right now we have, in fact, one of the news items was a drone operator in China who has been releasing what Tesla may feel is proprietary information about things like large clusters of cars sitting outside in lots being ready to be shipped, leaving the port in Shanghai or in China. And they're going to Canada. Now think of the logistics problem of making something in China across the ocean. You've got your tariffs and your customs fees and shipping costs and all of that. And then, of course, the impact on the environment makes so much more sense. If we're going to address the Canadian market, let's give them a gigafactory. Let's build one there.
Right. And Europe has largely become a free trade zone over the last decade or so. So if he has a battery manufacturing in France and automobile Model 3 manufacturing in Spain and Model Y manufacturing in Italy and so on and so forth, that would all work.
Yeah.
You do have some transportation logistics, but I think those transportation logistics would be more than offset over the years by the potential of millions, tens, hundreds of millions, or even billions of dollars in incentives from these governments to locate one of the gigafactories there. I mean, just look at what has been going on in Mexico and how beneficial that has been for that entire region of Mexico for Tesla to put its newest gigafactory down there.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall and sit in these negotiating sessions where the question is posed, all right, we're going to give you guys a $5 billion factory. What are you going to do for us?
Yeah.
Like the thing with Mexico, they have their own lane through customs at the border now so that it doesn't slow down production, the long waiting lines to get in and out of the country.
If you have a Tesla model, if you have a Tesla vehicle, you just go to the Tesla lane and you go right through.
And then I was talking to a friend of mine who was complaining about the level of crime in the cartels in Mexico. And I was pointing out, well, how's Tesla going to handle any of this, And he says, the Mexican government has actually set up army points on the road to Monterrey to protect the traffic going to and from Tesla. So it's those kinds of commitments. And I'd love to be there when, he talks to the Italians or the French and, what are you willing? I mean, this is basically bargaining now. And it's probably what Don Trump claims that he's best at is the art of the deal, making a deal, right?
Yes.
All right, looks like TikTok, Van Goatwagon. He says, dumb question. No such thing. Do the charging stations give off stray voltage when not in use? Are there capacitors? The connectors on those charging stations, the NACS connector, is pretty bulletproof. I've often thought, what happens, if there's a strong rainstorm, they get wet.
Sure.
Don't quote me on this, but I think those are off until it senses the appropriate connection to the car. So I don't think there's any live voltage there for there to be any kind of risk or danger. As far as any bleed off of voltage or loss of power, that would not happen either. We talk about the high tension lines that crisscross the United States. Now there you do have some power loss in a couple of ways. One is the voltage drop across an imperfect conductor.
Mm-hmm.
Even though those are copper cables, there is some resistance in those. And then you have a corona effect, which is the oozing of voltage into the environment, especially when it's humid. So you get some coupling back to ground where it, reduces the amount of voltage, but it's negligible. So, there is no concern there with the charging stations.
Yeah, I don't think the charging stations give off any of that kind of stray voltage like what you're just talking about with the power lines as well, because of the technology and communications that go on. These are not just dumb stations that you plug in and electricity turns on, and there's always communication going back and forth. I can remember times here in Arizona, we get 320 days or something like that per year of sunshine, and we get about 8 or 9 inches of rain in those other 20 or 30 days. And I'm going to say that we get about 2 inches of rain in 1 hour on one of those days.
Yeah, right.
That's just the nature. It's either raining really hard or not raining at all. I keep my car outside most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I have come back to my car, having started it charging. A rainstorm comes. I come back. The car is wet. It's not charging because there's just a little bit of water ingress around that port. It automatically knows how to turn itself off.
Yeah.
So these are very, very safe things, and I don't think there's stray voltage that goes on. Niles has another question for us on YouTube.
Yeah.
He says, do you have any opinions about Gotion batteries? I'm still hoping for Jordan Guiches someday. He would be happy to have to give a layman's review of the new batteries, which are the most promising.
You guys, we should jot that down. Maybe we can have Jordan as a podcast guest and give us the lowdown on these Gotion batteries.
Yeah, I have very little information on that. I have pulled up the website on my computer. I'll do the research. We'll talk about it again.
Perfect. Ingemar Anderson, who'll be joining us at some point for these podcasts, he says the trip planner takes elevation into consideration already, so it does.
Yeah, okay. I'm not surprised.
YouTube, Harvey Soicher, he says, really enjoying your show from Vancouver, British Columbia. Well, thank you for joining us. We've been identified as the Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers of the EV age. Do you know that
Yes.
NPR show? And I was amazed at their penetration. These guys have 3 million viewers, and they're syndicated on 600 radio stations.
Well, I always would aspire to be somebody like that. They're highly respected people, and I appreciate that.
TikTok, Randy Green says, I just bought a 2023 Plaid, and the panel gaps are insane. Doesn't Tesla have any quality control? We've got a video on this, actually a couple of years ago, and one of the comments that we made in the video was, if you're looking for an absolute perfect car with no gaps, with perfect paint, with a totally silent interior, you need to go to a German car manufacturer that has perfected their craft for the last number of decades. Any of these new EV manufacturers are going to suffer from these kinds of problems because their production processes are not perfected yet. But if you can live with it, it's an incredible car. That Plaid car is the fastest sedan on the planet. Well, except for Lucid now, right?
Yes, the Lucid Sapphire is a little bit faster.
Yeah. But, Tesla is very good about resolving issues too. So if you have any problems, take it back to your service center. If they agree, they will make it right for you. The only time that they didn't was in the early Founders Series Model S, which we have one in the shop now, by the way. We're not getting any bids on that, but we've got two of them. Founders number 3, both Model S and Tesla Roadster. They're for sale. For the right collector, you can get a set. The Model S actually crossed the stage where Elon handed the keys of the car to this first owner. And but anyway, this particular Model S has panel gaps. And the fundamental reason was back then their stamping machinery was selected for steel instead of aluminum, and aluminum relaxes after it's been stamped. And they have solved that problem, of course, since then. But if you have an issue, see what Tesla says. They may take care of you. We want to announce also, we do an artificial intelligence podcast every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. It's not Mark and I, it's actually Jesse and I. And at first it was kind of let's give it a shot and see who shows up. And we weren't really planning on doing a second one. Then we did the second one and we got like 2,000 visitors. This Sunday, we're going to do another one at 10 o'clock. They're usually about an hour or so. And what the purpose is to address all of the issues surrounding artificial intelligence, the fears, the concerns, the misinformation, even what is it and how can you use it? I'm going to give you an example here in a moment how I used it for this podcast just this morning. But for those of you interested, it's fun. We entertain questions. We entertain inputs. If you have advice, if you have opinions, we'd love to hear them. And it looks like this is going to be another podcast that is growing some legs here.
It's been fascinating to see. Not available when you guys get together on Sunday mornings. And so it's something that I do try to watch afterwards, though, and interesting conversations, really good stuff.
Is there an image you want me to pull up for this, or
is there one? I've got 2 screens right now, and one of them is occupied with something else, so I can't see my images. If you've got the thumbnail for the AI podcast, we could pop that up.
for the last one? Okay, hold on one sec.
Should be out there.
And for artificial intelligence, anything that helps to enhance our intelligence as humans could be deemed as artificial, to use that really wide definition.
Good point. Yeah.
And along the lines of that really wide definition, we can go back 2,500 years ago or more to the abacus that helped people be able to learn how to work with numbers. That is a method of artificial intelligence in and of itself.
True. Very true. Yeah. I don't have the image, Jesse, but
it's up there now.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Actually, the image there, somebody says, is that Santa Lucia? And I had to look it up. It's a beautiful island in the Caribbean. And there is a mountain that kind of looks like that image. what I asked for here, the prompt, let me read it to you because it might give you an idea of the capabilities that AI has. It doesn't look like I have it here.
Well, it should be in your Discord, right? You're just scrolling up through your Discord?
Yeah, I thought I brought it into the text here, but I guess I didn't. Anyway, I can paraphrase. I asked for an AI setting with gentle colors, reducing fear and trepidation, something like that, and something very pleasing to the eye that epitomizes the safety in AI, something to that extent. And that's what it came up with. And it's probably one of our more successful thumbnails.
Yeah, that definitely looks like the place that you'd want to go and vacation and relax for a little while.
Yeah.
Randy Green on TikTok. Let's see, we had his YouTube. Martin Ushland that says the AI show was great, and so was this. Many thanks from Sweden.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I've got an announcement to make about an event next week, Sunday. The San Diego Tesla Club got a event going at the Peterson Auto Museum, which is in Los Angeles. And Franz von Holzhausen will be a guest there. So he'll be available. The San Diego Tesla Club is going to meet at the Carlsbad Outlet Supercharger to start the drive up to Los Angeles. They start early. They're going to start this at 6 a.m. in the morning. So if you want to skip the drive up, at 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. is the event at the Peterson Auto Museum. And it does include free admission and cars and there will be coffee served, apparently. And you get a chance to talk to Franz von Holzhausen.
Yeah, I'm going to pull that up too.
Apparently, yeah, there's a picture for that. There we go. The Peterson has invested more heavily in the Tesla exhibit, and it was probably because 6 months ago or so, when they did their Tesla SpaceX exhibit, the event was wildly successful, and they realized there's a lot of interest here. So they go on, and here's an interesting description. They say Tesla's ultimate goal, as outlined by Elon Musk, is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. To achieve this objective, Tesla has expanded its offerings beyond EVs and now also produces batteries, solar roofs, and other energy products as part of its company-wide emphasis on sustainability and future powered by clean energy. So for those of you in that area, that's probably going to be a worthwhile event to attend. A lot of Tesla people there, and the exhibits from the pictures we've seen are expanded. And of course, if you weren't there 6 months ago, there are some interesting things to see there in that museum, including the T0 with the engine generator that it was pulling in order to get a charge back in the day. TikTok, Van Goatwagon says, one has passed away. Oh, one of the Tappet brothers. I did not know that. Click and clack. He says, you guys are watts and volts.
That's pretty cool. I could see us that way. Yeah. And then Niles on YouTube asks, are EVs more sensitive to solar flares than gas or diesel? A big one will come someday. Niles, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that right offhand.
Yeah, that is a great question.
Jesse, if you can...
yeah, I'll note that down. I'm
note
pretty
that
sure
one down.
Any electronics are going to be susceptible to that, but I'll look into that.
Thank you.
You know, I've got 21 items that make Teslas unique, unlike any other electric cars, but it's going to take us quite some time to go through those. And we're at just over an hour at this point. Maybe we can wrap and save that for a later broadcast. This Thursday, our guest is going to be Rafael de Maestri, who is the Roadster Around the World owner, who's going to make another trip around the world. So, again, we probably won't cover too much of these types of topics in that podcast because I think our audience is going to be interested to get some background on Raphael, what motivated him to do this, what kind of experiences he had on the road traveling around the world. I'm interested in going into different countries and, the different political instability that's in some of those countries.
Oh, I think he's going to have some fascinating stories. And I the man has to have absolutely perfected the Roadster wiggle.
Mm-hmm. Totally, yeah.
He's driving 250 to 300 miles a day for 127 days. Oh my gosh.
And then the continuous hunt for power to charge.
Yes.
Which can be daunting. The countries have different voltages, different hertz, and all of that. And the only way to keep a Roadster running, you can't use a supercharger, by the way. It does not do DC fast charging.
Right.
So you are basically stuck with destination chargers, and it likes a certain type of voltage and all that. So that will happen this Thursday, and we hope you can join us. Tomorrow we've got our Tesla Roadster podcast, which is going to be more Roadster-specific content. And then Sunday, those of you that don't mind getting up at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, you can join Jesse and I on discussing AI.
You can join us Thursday and Friday as well.
Friday, that's right. Friday we have our Gruber Power Services podcast, where we talk about the one of our sister divisions, which services critical power equipment all over the United States.
Yes, and Claude Dixon joins you for that one, and he is the Chief Operating Officer over at Gruber Power Services.
All right, so if there are no final questions, any other inputs?
I don't think so for today. I got a couple things to take away from Niles, and looking forward to getting that research. Very happy to be back. So thank you guys so much for watching and sticking with us. As always, it's you viewers that make the show a success.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you either tomorrow or those other days that we mentioned.
Take care.